Hello, it's Regina. Welcome back to my haunted library. Today I have a book review of a new issue of an old book, at least pretty old, 1991, and that is What's Wrong with Valerie by D.A. Fowler. Now, there's a lot wrong with Valerie, as I found out in this book. So this is a Capricorn Literary reissue. They have done a whole slew of old horror books from the 80s and 90s, and this is one of them. So I wanted to thank Capricorn Literary for sending me a copy of this book with its lovely cover, and it's really good. So they've sent me a few of these books from this reissue. A Capricorn Literary, like Valancourt Books, is doing their paperbacks from hell. There may be other ones. If there are, link them below because I'm very interested in this whole thing. I think it's amazing. And they're finding old books that were really good and are worth a second look. So this one definitely falls in that category. So when I was looking through YouTube, I noticed that Paperback Mania did a nice review of it. So I'm going to link that below. And I believe Alex from Hey Little Thrifter also did a review. And if I can find that, I'll also put that below. So, and they were both enthusiastic about it, and so am I. So, what's wrong with Valerie? D.A. Fowler, I believe her name was Deborah Fowler. I couldn't really find much information about her, honestly. But she has several books from this era on Goodreads. And after reading this one, I would love to continue finding her books and reading them. I'm also interested in women horror writers, and I think she would be a good one to explore. So I went on Amazon and I printed out just the blurb so I could have it with for this review. And I was disappointed to see that there were only 7 customer reviews. I mean, my horror books have more reviews than that. And there's something wrong with that. I mean, not for me, but for this book, because it's really good. And, I read a lot of horror, and some of it, quite frankly, is a little dumb. And sometimes I'm in the mood for a little dumb, but this one really kind of goes deep into a twisted psychology of this protagonist, Valerie. And I think it's hard sometimes, and I've read other attempts at doing this that weren't successful, but this one is successful. And that is to get into the head of a psychopath and make them interesting and sympathetic. And in this book, it really does. So I don't want to give too much away because it does depend on some good shocks, and I don't want to spoil it. But basically, it's about a young woman named Valerie who has been caring for her invalid grandmother for years, living in this home. The grandmother finally dies. Now she has inherited this house. And even though she's young and described as being rather attractive, she is a very isolated person. And she becomes haunted by her grandmother's voice and other voices in her head. And her grandmother was very verbally abusive and perhaps even physically abusive to Valerie. So we get into this kind of very deep, painful look into someone who was abused and how that kind of manifests in hallucinations, mental illness, or maybe these visions that she's hearing and seeing are actually real and some supernatural kind of phenomenon. As the book progresses, though, I mean, it starts out with you're very with Valerie, you're very with her, and it's very clever the way it slowly chips away at the reader's confidence in this character, if that makes sense, but you're still right there with her. She decides to take in a boarder to help in this house to help pay some of the bills. And like I said, the whole time she's being harassed by this inner voice of this grandmother, or it's maybe a ghost, you're not really sure, just telling her constantly what a loser she is. And it's very, very painful. And this guy moves in, his name's Gavin. He's kind of just a quiet guy. He works as a librarian. And Valerie starts becoming really kind of infatuated with him, starts having these sexual fantasies about him. We kind of get into Gavin's point of view as well and how he thinks about her or doesn't think about her at all. And this is kind of going on, it kind of reminds me of that great movie from the 70s, Play Misty for Me, with Clint Eastwood, or Fatal Attraction. I've always loved those female characters as really unhinged female characters. I've just added Valerie to the pantheon of my favorite unhinged female characters. So, like I said, you're not really sure if Valerie is psycho or just exhausted from the ordeal of caring for her grandmother and she's losing it, or if there really are these weird. She sees these images with these weird monsters, but the book really turns into something completely different when she decides it's a good idea to kidnap her little, I think it's her niece, a little 6-7-year-old girl named Tamara. And once she does that, it's a different story, but you're still very much with it. But now you're going crazy because she's got this kid and God knows what she's going to do with the child. And it just becomes increasingly more tense, and the action builds and the tension builds into this great conclusion. So, and it's not a long book. I mean, I could not put this book down, like literally couldn't put it down until I had to go to sleep, and then I started reading it the next day. So it took me like 2 days to read this. And it's great. It's a really great book. I highly recommend it. 5 stars. And if any of you guys have read this, please comment below. If you haven't read it and you're looking for that kind of, it's definitely like a psychological horror. I wouldn't call it quiet horror because there's some there are some gruesome scenes in this. Paperback Mania, like I said, I totally agreed with his review on it. He kind of says it has a bit of like a V.C. Andrews kind of Southern Gothic vibe, which I definitely concur with that. It's really good. But whereas I think V.C. Andrews gets into like, and not saying I don't love this because I do, but it gets kind of campy, and I love camp. This doesn't get into that campy stuff. It really kind of like dug deep, and it's very well written. So overall, I give this book high marks, and I wanted to thank Capricorn Literary again for sending me this, and it's going on my shelf with my other Capricorn Literary books. It's wonderful to rediscover a book that might be just lost because someone has taken it off the shelf, dusted it off, given it a new packaging, and said, hey, read this, it's definitely worth it. So if you're looking for a good horror book, if you're looking for horror books written by women, check out What's Wrong with Valerie by D.A. Fowler. Okay, guys, that's all I have for today. Thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon. Bye.